went out to the area looking for evidence. I went into the evidence locker in, I think, Austin, Texas. We looked at every piece of evidence there. We were there with the Texas Rangers took us in. We filmed a lot of that. And I think, I think I probably stand where most of the nation stand. There was a mature way to handle that, and the way it was handled was wrong. And I talked to people that were the Branch Davidians, and I'm not either sympathetic or unsympathetic to who and what they were, but if they were going after that David, what was his name?
Koresh. Koresh.
David Koresh. If they were going after him, they could have got him while he was jogging down the road. They could have got him when he was at the hardware store in town. They could have, picked him up. I understand that, a 50 cal round went through a government helicopter, so it wasn't like they were sitting underneath there not doing anything about what they perceived to be an attack. But, when I was at the site the site was closed. I mean, it was, the Branch Davidians invited us in. But I picked up a piece of molten metal at the site where the bunker itself burned up, and why there was a hole blown in the top of it, I don't know that. It looked like something a shape charge would put in it. But those people should have been safe in that bunker, and they were just burned alive. And I think telling that story, if you go to, Google Waco, a new revelation, that pretty much says that's the information that was gathered, that we were able to gather.
Gotcha. And what kind of work did you do on the first World Trade Center bombing? I think it was 93, right? Or 90? Yeah, 90.
Yeah, I was in law school at the time, and I was in my first year of law school, and I was printing out an appellate brief, a practice appellate brief, when the security came in and they said, you're wanted at FBI headquarters. And we got back to headquarters, and somebody said they thought a transformer might have blown, but they needed us up there in case it was a terrorist attack. So me and my partner drove a whole bunch of equipment up to the site. Set up a laboratory in the New York City Police Department Academy. Built a whole crime lab. Brought in vendors with their equipment. Spent $250,000 on different equipment. Brought it in. Set it up. We went into the. It was, the scene inside was surreal. There were cars, alarms going off. There were fires here and there. There were chunks of concrete just falling. In fact, we went into a room where 45 minutes after we walked out, the whole ceiling just went. And if we'd have been in there when it went, they wouldn't have found us, or they'd have just mashed us flat. But we collected evidence trying to find out what type of explosive had gone off. And we collected evidence in other places, and to see what was it that set it off, why had it set off. And we were there for 10, 22-hour days. And at the end of it, the evidence that we had collected, some of it was nitroglycerin, and the nitroglycerin has a very high vapor pressure. It gets in the air and it contaminates all your evidence. We had to shut the lab down and go home. But it was a matter of go up and stay awake as long as you could, keep the equipment going as long as you could, analyze as much as you could. And we had a phenomenal crew from the FBI there in that lab. When you're awake for 10 days and you're getting 2-3 hours sleep a night, and when we had to shut the lab down, everyone was they were fried. They were upset, tears in people's eyes. We need to keep going. We need to keep going. We need to keep going. Well, yeah, the problem was we couldn't, because all our equipment was contaminated by that time.
We better take a commercial break. But when I get back, I have a couple more questions for you about the World Trade Center, the first World Trade Center bombing. We're here with Dr. Fred Whitehust, FBI whistleblower, involved in some of the hugest cases of history in the past 20, 30 years. We'll be right back with more of Dr. Fred Whitehust after these messages. And now a word from our sponsors. EmailRevealer.com. People ask me all the time, hey, Ed, are you still a private investigator? I sure am. Go to emailrevealer.com. We handle adoption investigations, infidelity investigations, where you give us your spouse's email address. We trace it back to online dating websites, catch them cheating online, email tracing, locate or identify somebody from as little as an anonymous email address. Someone owe you money? Back child support? We can find that deadbeat, locate his hidden assets, locate his hidden bank accounts, find his current place of employment, and even assist you in obtaining a judgment and recover that judgment for you. Emailrevealer.com. Digital forensics, computer forensics, cell phone forensics, recover deleted text messages, create a report that you can use in court. Emailrevealer.com, 800-572-9762.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Before we get back to our guest, Dr. Fred Whitehust, I want to tell you about my friends over at MichiganMushrooms.net. Now, they offer the highest quality chaga chunk available anywhere. It's picked fresh from healthy live trees in Michigan's Upper Peninsula, sun-dried, and quickly shipped to you. They're very proud of their long-standing reputation as trusted farmers and collectors of wild gourmet medicinal mushrooms. Customer service and offering high-quality products is very important to them. They have a strict grading system that begins in the woods, and they'd rather pass up a chunk that looks bad instead of trying to pass it off on a customer. Now, additionally, they're recognized by the state of Michigan as mushroom experts and are certified by the Department of Agriculture to sell 20 different species of mushrooms. Proof of this certification, as well as laboratory test results showing the levels of polysaccharides and betulinic acid and more, are available on request. Check them out on Facebook, Michigan Mushrooms LLC, or their website. You can order mushrooms tonight at MichiganMushrooms.net. If you go to the Opperman Report blog, there's a link there and has a code from the Opperman Report. Use your code, the word ED, and you get 10% off. And it makes a great Christmas gift. But we are here tonight with Dr. Fred Whitehust, former FBI whistleblower, testified before Congress, uncovering FBI mishandling of evidence and perjury and all kinds of fun stuff, you might call it. Dr. Whitehust, back to the World Trade Center bombing. Now, the official story with that was that you guys found a VIN number off of the truck, and then they were able to lure one of the bombers back to the rental company by telling him that he had a deposit. Now, what do you make of that story? You were there. Did you find that VIN number?
No, I'll tell you what, the FBI didn't find that VIN number. What happened was the FBI declared that they were in charge of the crime scene.
Okay.
And which was, somebody had to be in charge. And there was a crusty old ATF agent who wouldn't have anything to do with it. And he went down there with a crew, and they went around and they found it. And there was a little bit of a ATF FBI hackles up over it, but it was ATF, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, that found that piece of metal and found that number. And what you're describing is what happened, but it wasn't us. It was, as far as FBI, it was ATF. They were the heroes there. The VIN number led to a particular place that the thing was rented out, and they got the guy back there, and that then began the, okay, well, here's who did it. Kind of, it wasn't, once ATF decided they were going to do it right, then that's the way that thing figured out.
Okay, so while you were working on that, you didn't see any kind of mishandling of evidence or any kind of perjury or anything going on in that case?
How would you say? There were a lot of mistakes made. There were a whole bunch of mistakes made. But, when you've got 40,000 tons or 200,000 tons of rubble that you're dealing with, and you're trying to go through it, and you've got people from 6 and 7 different agencies, and there's always, people at each other's throats from different agencies. That's what's going to happen. Mistakes are going to be made, and that crime scene was probably, is one of the most complex in American history up until that time. What we really ended up with, from my sort of where I was looking at it, was we had a president said no stones unturned. We had an attorney general that said, and we went on down the line, but nobody wanted to run the thing. Okay, nobody wanted to be there and micromanage or whatever, up until there was an FBI agent in the FBI's explosive unit who just went in, and we were all over at another building that was near there, and it was a staging area, and all these agencies and people milling around and a lot of hot tempers, and he stood up on this stool and he said, "This is the FBI crime scene, and anybody gets in our way, it's going to be we're going to hold you for obstruction of justice. So get out of our way. You want to be part of the answer, or you want to be part of the problem?" And everybody was pleased. I mean, he stood up and said, "This is the way it's going to go." And I was very proud of him. I wouldn't have wanted to run that crime scene. It was chaos. There was no way to control people coming and going. There was no way to, there were some firemen that were in the building. They brought their girlfriends in to show them the crime scene, and there was some media folks that went right in, and it was extremely dangerous. That building was swaying, and what was going to happen if it caused the building to come down? It was a miracle in engineering that stabilized the whole thing. And, sadly, it didn't last for too many years. But were there problems? Yes, there were some phenomenal problems there. But I think that the prosecutor that handled it saw the problems and was forthright about them, upfront about them. If there was problems with evidence, he didn't introduce, the evidence as part of what went on. The forensic work was, it was just almost impossible. Here's the thing: you get the bomb was supposed to have been made of a material called urea nitrate, but urea nitrate goes off and it puts nitric ions all over in urea. But urea is used to melt ice at that time on the streets of New York. So if you found urea, it didn't mean anything. And nitrate ions come from, this acid rain we've got and car exhaust and things like that. So people tried to say, we found it, therefore that's what this means. And our response was, well, it might be what it means, but there are other things that it could point to. And I remember I wrote a report offering alternative explanations for the data. And I got the report back, and my boss, who was a really great guy, he said, "Fred, I don't want to push this on you, but the guys up top don't want you to put alternative explanations in the report. This could have come from a urea nitrate-based bomb. However, there are other things," and I named some other things. And I looked at him and I said, "Well, you know what? Then they can fire me. I'm not going to lie in a court of law. I'm not going to lie on this report." We knew that what the issues were, the vulnerabilities were, and I wasn't the only guy that stood up. There were other people that said the FBI management is a mess. I'm telling you, it's a mess. They get there by political means rather than what you say, just honest police work. And once they get there, they want to stay there. And it's if you make this truth, whether anybody wants or anybody believes it or not, because that's the way you're going to get promoted to the next level. And one of these days, they're going to profile FBI managers correctly, so that people don't get promoted just because they wanted to agree with a director.
Hi, I'm Jay Farner, CEO of Quicken Loans. 30% of Americans who are planning home improvements of $5,000 or more will pay for those renovations with a high-interest credit card. That may not be a great idea. A better idea may be to take cash out of your home with a Quicken Loans 30-year fixed-rate mortgage. The rate today on our 30-year fixed-rate